Guys, Trey Lance, brutal injury. We hope he makes a full recovery, but in this silly game we call Dynasty football, we got to know what to do with him. So, Scott, what's your take?
Yeah, unfortunate that it happens, but we play a game. We have to move on. We have to assess. You got to pick a lane. You can't wait for the market to set. You can't say, oh, well, this is what I would do if my team is like this, or this is what I would do if my team is like that. So I arrived at the conclusion after thinking about this for a couple hours after the injury, and then we got the news that he's having surgery. He's going to be out for the year. I don't think it's as bad as the Dak Prescott injury. It sounds more kind of like the DJ Chark injury, but it's going to be 6 months. It's definitely a season ender, and he's probably going to be back. Maybe we're going to get reports that he's back sometime next draft season, right? Sometime then, April, May. So there's no worries about the future of him being healthy for next season. The question is, what does that look like? He's only started 4 games. I think it, unfair or not, I think you have to now say there's questions in San Francisco about whether Trey Lance is a second contract guy on their team.
Yep.
So I think that's the first thing. As soon as there's questions from the NFL perspective on, is this guy even it? Is this guy the future? We have to start to pivot. We can't just be like, oh, he was a 3rd overall pick. Who cares? Another year down the road, nothing's changed. I think we have to react to this. Because the injury people that I've listened to, they're like, you know what? He's going to be able to come back from this injury. This isn't like he's never going to be the same. This isn't like a shoulder injury where we don't even know how he's going to come back and be able to throw anymore or something. But we haven't seen enough to be like, yeah, this is Dak Prescott. He'll get back. Give it a year. He'll be fine. So I think we have to penalize him based on that. Then we have to penalize him based on the fact he's going to be out for the year. Then we also, I think, have to penalize him based on the fact there was already a sector of the community that was like, I don't believe in Trey Lance. You can overpay for him. I acknowledge why he's QB7, QB8, QB9 in Dynasty, but I ain't touching him at his current price. So not that they're vindicated with this injury, but I think there's people that are taking a little bit of a silent victory lap going like, well, I wasn't in on that guy anyway. So now he's injured. Everyone else is screwed. But those are definitely not the people that are going, I can't wait to buy back in at QB 12 prices. They're going, yeah, I'm out. I have no interest in him. So there's going to be a limited market too. That's the other thing, is it's not like he's going to bounce back. When Deshaun Watson's value bounced back, there's probably 11 other people in the league that are like, I will trade for Deshaun Watson. There might be only like 3 or 4 people that want Trey Lance. And then what price do they want him at? So I arrived at the conclusion, it's any first I'm out, with the caveat that I play in a portfolio of leagues and there's going to be opportunities for me to buy back in just based on how we're going to forecast the market. I don't think Trey Lance, if you go into next offseason, especially if you do startups in like January, February, March, I don't think he's going to be going even in the range where like the top 10, 23 firsts are going to be picked. So you're talking like 5th, 6th, 7th round startup pick. I'd rather get my Trey Lance shares then and have the first available this year, or an equivalent quarterback that I can trade for, or an equivalent player I can trade for. I'd rather have those live assets now, because I don't think the cost is going to be worth the time drain. I'm going to be able to get my exposure back in 7 to 8 months without paying much more of a price. So give me the liquid first now, or trade at a quarterback. We'll talk about what quarterbacks you'd trade. But I'm out. Any first, I'm out, and then I'll worry about getting more Lance shares later.
So you'd sell for any 23 or 24 first. Shane, what's your take, buddy?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say the same thing as Scott, so I won't. So I'll just talk about, you won't like this. Well, why don't you trade for him? Look, you're still banking on the upside, right? So how about I trade Kenny Pickett for him, right? Look at their relative ranges of outcomes, what we think they're going to be. Kenny Pickett, I think even his most ardent supporters think he's Mac Jones plus.
Oh, baby.
QB 14, 15.
Right.
Trey Lance still in his range of outcomes is QB 5, 6, 7, 8. Like that skill set still exists. Obviously you're taking the risk, and that's why you can get him for Kenny freaking Pickett, because you're taking the risk, right?
So if you want to buy him, would you recommend that instead of giving a 24 first, you try to give like more of a replaceable wide receiver, for example? So a wide receiver that could be worth a 24 first. George Pickens, would you trade George Pickens straight up for Trey Lance?
I'll give you George Pickens and Dameon Pierce.
It's not going to be always as simple as Trey Lance for a first or a first for Trey Lance. So, I mean, I think immediately you say, well, can I get a first for George Pickens? I mean, you could have before the season, if you would have listened to Shane, all your George Pickens would be first. And now you could probably buy back George Pickens plus for the same first. So yeah, I mean, I think I thought you were going to ask about quarterbacks because I get a lot of questions in the last day about quarterbacks. Like, would you trade Kirk Cousins for Trey Lance, or would you trade Derek Carr for Trey Lance, or even Aaron Rodgers? I mean, I put up some polls today, and the only quarterback he beat in the 3 polls that I put up was Kenny Pickett, and he's destroyed Kenny Pickett. But I'm just kind of wondering, like, Kenny Pickett isn't starting right now, but if Kenny Pickett were to be named the starter tomorrow, are you really trading Trey Lance for like Kenny Pickett and a 24 first or something like that? Like that's what the polls indicate, that like it's clearly Trey Lance over Kenny Pickett. So I don't know. I don't see deals, at least right now, where someone's going to go, oh, I'm a middle of the pack team. Kirk Cousins is my QB2. Let me just go trade him straight up for Trey Lance. Why? I mean, I would go the other way on those. So I think it's going to be hard to do quarterbacks for quarterbacks. So yeah, if you can trade him for, wide receiver 3 for Trey Lance, I'm doing it, because most of the time those receivers are guys we would cash out for first anyway.
So I got an offer today to buy Trey Lance. I have in that league, I have Kyler, Jalen Hurts, and Matthew Stafford. So I have some flexibility. He offered me his Trey Lance, what it would end up being a mid 23 first and a 24 first for Jalen Hurts. And I hit decline. Was that a good move?
Yes.
I just don't see the incentive to make that trade right now. You can make that same trade in 4 weeks if you don't like the status of your team. It might be off the table, but I don't think the price is going anywhere but up in your favor. You know what I mean? Trey Lance is a dead asset for the next 6 months. So there is no worry that like, ooh, his price is going to go up and I'm not going to be able to get any shares. You can get him in a month. So I just don't see the reason to trade like a top 5 quarterback for him. No reason.
No, there's literally none at all. I was DM'd by someone who actually used Trey Lance, Travis Etienne, and I think a 23 first, and they got Kyler Murray, and I love that. But so that's something I would definitely explore. Like, I'm taking a bunch of just questionable assets, right? Like, I love Travis Etienne, but he hasn't done anything yet. Trey Lance, as much as I just talked about how much, I like him and his upside's great. The dude is basically not played football and going to be 3 seasons, and then a 23 first for Kyler Murray. So I would do that. It's something like that.
So would you trade Trey Lance if you needed the points and you want to contend? Would you trade Trey Lance for Nick Chubb right now?
Yeah, Trey Lance is no longer a foundational piece. So that this is kind of where I'm at now, right? Because there's so much risk involved. There was already risk involved with him anyway that I was willing to, I guess, overlook or hope against. But it's been compounded because now he's had another year where he's going to be off, right? Where there's these other outside factors where Jimmy G somehow takes him to the Super Bowl. And even if he doesn't take him to the Super Bowl, he takes them to the playoffs. They make a deep playoff run. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have to look at themselves and go, do we really want to move on from this guy? I know we paid an arm and a leg to get Lance, but in the new NFL, you don't look at sunk costs like that. You know what I mean? Like,
and they won't, right? They don't seem like the organization that's
No.
gonna, hold on to that. Right.
No, they cut third round rookie picks, the following season when they're like, yep, this just didn't work. So there's too many variables there for me to consider him a foundational piece anymore. So Nick Chubb, probably not my first target, but
right.
Something like that. Yep.
It's interesting because just to add this, Jimmy Garoppolo in his reworked deal, he's not allowed to be franchise tagged. He's not allowed to be traded. So he is now playing with house money. And I will say this, there is absolutely 0% chance if he wins the Super Bowl that he's re-signing with San Francisco. He wins the Super Bowl, he's getting $40 million from somebody else.
Yep.
And the Niners can't do a damn thing about it. They can't franchise him and be like, oh, we're going to franchise tag him and then trade him. They have no leverage. He is basically like, you were our backup plan, but now we need you, but we have no control over you. This isn't like last year where they can hold him all throughout the offseason. And I know the surgery kind of complicated that, but this is his opportunity. And I know they even said it on the broadcast the other day that Jimmy Garoppolo, he may now play with like a free spirit that he's never had before. Because before it was always he had the big contract. He had to be the franchise guy after he got out from behind a Brady. And then they drafted Lance. So like he's had this pressure, up his ass for the last year and a half. And now he's got nothing to lose. Like he's playing with a good team. He's probably going to smash relative to a lot of other quarterbacks. and then he hits the open market and they can't stop him. So he can go to San Fran and be like, yeah, pay me the Derek Carr contract, but San Fran's not going to do that because they need to see what they have in Trey Lance. It's a good time to buy Jimmy and sell Jimmy. I know this isn't a Jimmy podcast, but yeah, he's not coming back to San Fran, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's like little to no drama with the situation, even if he wins.
We should talk about Jimmy though real quick. So would you give a 23 second and a 24 second for Jimmy G?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to, yeah, because I think he's probably elevated himself above some of these other quarterbacks that were starting before him. Now he's starting. He's going to start the rest of the year. So, I mean, I think you easily could say I'd prefer him over, I mean, definitely like Baker Mayfield, Matt Ryan, those types. Tannehill and Jimmy G are kind of the same, but I think he's in that range immediately where it's like he's not just a rest of the season starter. Whereas guys like Daniel Jones, Baker Mayfield, Matt Ryan for sure. Like he jumped those guys. His second Trey Lance got hurt, he jumped to like top 24 quarterback in Dynasty. So I think he's right there with like Jameis Winston, Ryan Tannehill. Like they could start next year. They're under contract next year, but you could easily see a situation where the team is like, yeah, we want somebody else. So I mean, I think he's a big winner for sure.
I was out shopping for Jameis Winston's Travis Tannehill, whatever. I'll give him a new name. Ryan Tannehill, Jameis Winston, like just dudes in that range last weekend, throwing around seconds. So I'll do it for Jimmy, especially 24 second. Like the 23 second hurts more, obviously, than the 24 second. The 24 second's not even a real thing. I'll get that back anyway. The other thing this allows you to do is use Jimmy as an actual trade chip. Just actually traded for Jimmy in a league, kind of. I traded Kenny Pickett for Jimmy and a 24 first. So, okay.
I like it.
Yeah, I'll do that. But this is, definitely, you need to be exploring. You don't like that, Scott?
No, that's a crap. Who in their right mind looks at that trade and goes, "Man, this is what I've been waiting all year to pay for Kenny Pickett."
I'm gonna tear up. I'm gonna tear up from Jimmy G to Kenny Pickett.
So one of the things we need to put out there though is, look, if you have a Trey Lance owner in your league, which there's probably one of them, at least one of them, you want to go to them and see what you can extract from them, right? Especially now, you're not a vulture. The day after, the day of, it's a little sickening. Maybe wait till Tuesday, but Tuesday, you send them an offer, and it's not going to be a great offer. It's definitely they're going to be overpaying. Someone offered me, I think it was Trey Lance, and like a 24 second for Matt Stafford. And I'm like, no, that's not going to work. Like you need to make them overpay. You need to make them feel that pain. Like they're the one that's in pain.
Yeah, you have to tax them. You have to tax them because you're bailing them out.
Yeah, unless they got Trey Lance in the rookie draft, right? They probably drafted him pretty high in the startup. I know.
Second round.
Yeah, the leagues that I had him in, I don't know where he went in all of those, but the leagues that I did have him in, it was because I overdrafted him in the startup draft. So that they're in a position where they're like, well, I'm pot committed this year. Even if they built their team long term, they're still thinking, well, thought I had a contender this year. So you need to go to those teams and use that confidence against them, make them overpay for an asset like Jimmy G, who is really not going to help them greatly. He's not going to replace what you thought Trey Lance was going to be because you were drafting Trey Lance to be Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, etc. But you need to go extract some value out of him or her.